The handsome predator in the town of Makanda. Mornings woke with music. Roosters cried from tin roofs. Mbira notes floated from a shop that sold second-hand radios. Smoke lifted from small braziers where old women roasted mealies and sweet bananas. The market became a living river. Bright chitenges, loud bargaining, dust rising in soft brown clouds under many feet. And then he appeared, like a knife hidden in silk, Kundai Marembo. His shirts were always white like new clouds. His shoes shone, like quiet lakes at sunset. His scent, expensive, sweet, proud, announced him a few steps before his smile did. When he walked, boys moved aside to make space. Women looked, then looked away, then looked again. Some whispered and covered their mouths. A few complained, "Aish, that one again," but their eyes still followed him. Kundai bought things like a king who wanted the whole market to clap for him. A full basket of mangoes, a string of smoked fish, 2 long packets of rice for the auntie who ran the sewing stall. He paid with crisp notes and never waited for the change. "Keep it," he would say, with a good man's smile that made his teeth look like polished cowrie shells. People laughed, bowed, thanked him loudly, but a proverb was also moving through the market that morning, the way wind moves through tall grass. "A hyena with perfume is still a hyena." The perfume smelled nice. The hyena still had teeth. Kundai knew the whispers. He liked them. He lived on them like a hunter lives on dried meat. He would tilt his head, run a palm over his perfect hair, and let his gaze rest on whichever face dared to stare back. The gaze felt warm, like fire feels warm from a distance. Up close, it burned. He reached the tomato stall where Gogo Malanga sat beside pyramids of red fruit. Her hands were dark and strong, the hands of someone who had carried many years without. Dropping them, Kundai greeted her with a sweet voice, as if greeting a queen. "Good morning, Gogo," he said. "How is the health of your shadow today?" Gogo's eyes were slow and bright. "My shadow is old," she said, "but it still follows me. What brings you to my tomatoes again, Kundai?" "Your tomatoes," he said, "make soup taste like a song. He bought too many. He paid too much. He made the coins shine in the sun and told her to keep them." The young women selling onions watched him with a mixture of wonder and worry. Gogo did not smile. She stacked his tomatoes carefully into a brown paper bag, as if she was building a small house with a thin roof. "Your kindness is loud," Gogo said. "I hope your temper is quiet." Kundai laughed as if she had told a joke. "Ah, Gogo, you know people talk. They say I am a storm, but see, I am only a little wind." Gogo slid the last tomato into the bag and handed it to him. "Little winds are the ones that become storms," she said. "A man who has broken a plate with his hand can one day break a heart with the same hand, and that pain takes longer to sweep." Kundai's smile did not move. Only his eyes changed, like a lizard's eye when a fly lands nearby. He leaned in, still gentle. "Old people fear too much," he said, touching his chest. "This heart loves. Ask anyone." Gogo looked past, him at the road beyond the market where dust swam in light. "He who must tell his own goodness has already hidden something," she said softly. He left with a soft chuckle, paper bag in hand. Behind him, women clicked their tongues as if spitting sand. One whispered, "Gogo sees souls." Another whispered, "But see how fine he is." A mother pulled her daughter closer. A girl with gold earrings stared after him until the corner, swallowed him like a mouth. Kundai's apartment sat on a little hill above Makanda in a block painted the color of dull eggs. Inside, everything was neat and expensive. Glass table, leather sofa, a rug that felt like river grass under bare feet. A dark wooden frame on the wall carried his most loved mirror. He stood there often, like a soldier reporting to a commander, and the commander kept praising him back with the same handsome face. That morning, he put his market things down and removed the mirror's cloth cover like a priest opening a shrine. He studied the way his shirt sat on his shoulders. He studied the clean line of his jaw. He spoke 3 quiet words that tasted like sugar cane to his own ears. You are power. On the shelf next to the mirror lay small graves, a cracked phone screen, 2 dead remotes, a picture frame with a spiderweb crack running through the glass. The room smelled like citrus and polish. It did not smell like shouting. But the shouting lived here too, small and coiled, like a snake under a folded blanket. He touched one knuckle with his thumb. The skin there had thickened like gum under a desk. A memory came like a shadow. Lindiwe, the one who loved flowers. She used to bring small vases to brighten his kitchen window. One evening, they argued about a message on her phone. He said he was only asking. She said he was not trusting. The vase fell. His palm hurt. Lindiwe left with her clothes in a grocery bag, crying quietly so the neighbors would not hear. He told himself she was dramatic. He told himself he never actually hit her. That had been his favorite defense. I never actually hit you. As if broken things around a woman never fell on her spirit. The mirror offered his beautiful face back. He put on music to drown the thought and went to the kitchen to wash the tomatoes. Water ran silver over red and down the drain like tiny rivers leaving mountains. His phone buzzed. The name on the screen was Tendai. "Brother," she said when he answered. Tendai's voice always wore serious clothes. "Are you coming by today? Mama wants to see you." He rolled his eyes without letting his voice show it. "I will try," he said. "Work is heavy." "Work is heavy," she repeated. "But your shadow is heavier. You keep dragging it into other people's houses." He leaned against the counter, watching the water gather in a circle around the sink. "Ah, Tendai, not again." "Again until it changes," she said. "Listen to me. The market women are talking. The girls from the church are talking. Last week I saw Tariro at the clinic with a bruise the size of a coin under her eye. She said she walked into a cupboard. I saw fear walking ahead of that lie. It wore your surname." Silence grew tall between them like grass not cut after the rain. "I never hit her," he said at last. The favorite defense. It came out by itself like a cough. "I don't care about your fingers," Tendai said. "I care about your voice. You throw it like stones. You break things and make the room unsafe. You make the air heavy. That is also violence." He tried a laugh. It sounded like a drum with a hole. "Aish, Tendai, you and your big words. And you and your broken plates," she said. "One day you will meet a woman who will not bend. She will stand the way mountains stand. That day your mirror will stop loving you." "Threats?" he said, still smiling with a mouth that was now tired. "From my own blood?" "Warnings," she said. "From the one who will still love you after your mirror is honest." He hung up politely, then stared at his phone as if it had spit on him. He twisted the tap hard. Water screamed. 2 tomatoes rolled into the sink and bumped each other like frightened friends. He shut the water off. He breathed in, breathed out. The fake deep breaths of a man who has seen this trick on television. He told himself he controlled storms. He told himself storms made him interesting. When the breath was finished, his smile had returned. The cheeky one. The world, he told himself, clapped for cheek. At the Malika bar that night, the roof shook with old township jazz and the smell of beer. Lamps hung low, making gold puddles on wooden tables. Men slapped each other's backs and boasted. Business, cars, football, which preacher was fake and which sang like an angel. Kundai's friends called him King. It was the kind of name an empty cup gave to the river. He arrived late, like sugar arriving late to porridge. The boys cheered. Simba shouted, "Makanda's very own prince." Becky added, The man who makes the moon stand still to see his shoes! Kundai laughed. He allowed himself to be praised as if it cost him nothing. He ordered the first round, then a second, then a third for show. Heads turned when he walked to the restroom. Waitresses smiled with teeth, then frowned with brows after he passed. At midnight, the long grass of conversation leaned in on him. "Tell us," Simba said, leaning on his elbow. "What happened to that girl? The one with the braids that looked like a waterfall. What was her name again?" "Don't remember," Kundai said, which was not true. He remembered Rejoice very well. He remembered the way she had once laughed with her whole mouth open, no hand covering it, no fear of being unpretty. He remembered the night her laughter broke like a cup. Becky wagged a finger. "Aish, King, you must learn to keep the good ones, soft, obedient, the kind who cook before you speak." The table laughed. Kundai smiled and raised his glass, taking in the smoke, the heat, the pride. Pride is a spirit that likes music. It danced around him now, wrapping him like a new jacket. But then a quiet voice near his shoulder interrupted. The music around his ears. "You boys laugh too loudly," the voice said. "When women cry, do you hear them this loudly?" It was Munya, the bartender. He was a thin man with a thoughtful forehead. Men had ignored his mouth for years because he used it to speak small truths without permission. The table fell silent. "Ah, Munya," Becky said, trying to smile. "Pour the man wisdom on the rocks. He is thirsty." Munya poured beer anyway, not wisdom, but his eyes rested on Kundai a second longer than usual. In that second, Kundai felt something he did not name. He carried it home later like a stone, in his pocket, hoping to throw it away and finding it still there when he reached his door. Sunday morning, the apartment wore quiet like a shawl. Far away, church bells counted 9. In the yard, children kicked a ball that had once been a proper ball and now was a tight bundle of plastic bags under string. Kundai stood in front of his mirror again, the brown paper bag of tomatoes now empty on the counter. He ironed a shirt, each stroke neat and sure. He liked the sound, soft steam, fabric becoming obedient. His phone buzzed with a new message. Unknown number. "My name is Sister Blessing from St. Mary's Clinic. We're doing a community health drive in your building. We'll need to use your lobby for a few hours. I got your number from the caretaker. Is that okay?" Kundai almost typed. A quick no, because he did not like strangers in his lobby. He liked control. Then he imagined the way the caretaker would talk about it in the yard. He imagined the little claps that would not happen when he passed by. He typed yes. "Thank you," came the reply. "A new nurse just joined us from the Highlands. She will lead the blood pressure station. You will like her. Everyone does. She is calm, like evening water." Something in him smiled, and he did not know why. He wore his white shirt, the one that made him look like a promise, and went downstairs to check the lobby when the clinic team arrived. They came with plastic chairs piled like blue clouds and a table covered with a clean cloth. They set up quickly, moving with the ease of people used to carrying small mountains for others. An elderly man sat down first, rolling up his sleeve. A young mother held a sleepy baby with one hand and filled a form with the other. And there, quiet, steady, eyes bright but not loud, stood a woman in a simple navy dress. She moved like someone who had listened to many storms without letting them live inside her. Her hands were sure, her voice warm, her smile small but honest. When she looked at someone, the person felt counted, not weighed. Kundai did not know her name. He only knew his heart did a strange, slow thing, like a drum that missed a beat and then remembered its work. She was not the most beautiful woman he had ever seen by the measure of magazines, but she carried a beauty the market could not price. It was in the way she helped the old man roll his sleeve without making him feel foolish, in the way she laughed softly with the baby so the mother could catch her breath, in the way she wrote numbers neatly on a chart, as if each number was a person who deserved a careful home. "Good morning," Kundai said, stepping forward like a cat stepping onto warm stone. "Welcome to the building. I am Kundai. If you need anything, ask me." She looked at him only once, and in that once, he felt somehow seen and not celebrated. Not scolded, not charmed, just seen. "Thank you," she said. Her voice was simple. "I am Nyasha." The name passed through him like cool water after hot tea. Grace. That is what it meant. He knew that from school and from old songs. He smiled the smile that had bought him many doors. "Nyasha," he said, tasting the word. "Beautiful name." She nodded, already turning back to an old woman whose feet hurt. "Names are only names," she said kindly. "It is what we do that makes them heavy." He stood there longer than he needed to, watching her help, write, listen. He told himself he was only being a good host. He told himself he was checking the chairs. In his pocket, the stone Munya had put there last night shifted a little, as if making space for something else beside it, something that smelled like wet earth after rain and sounded like a drum learned by heart. He touched his wrist, felt the strong beat under the skin, and smiled. "You are power," he whispered to himself without moving his lips. But a wind from far places, the kind of wind that grows before you notice, blew softly through the lobby and answered in a language he did not understand. Not this time. The clinic team packed up near noon. People waved and blessed them, children, ran after the van, and then gave up, laughing, when it turned the corner. The lobby returned to its usual quiet. A plant in the window, a broom against the wall, sunlight making coins on the floor. Kundai waited by the door, catching Nyasha's eye with the soft net of a smile. "You must be tired," he said. "Can I carry something to your car?" She looked at the box he pointed to. "It is not heavy," she said, "but 2 hands are better than 1. They carried the box together. It was only forms and a cuff, and a small machine that hummed politely. Outside, the jacaranda trees let purple flowers fall like letters no one had time to read. Nyasha opened the van's back door. "Thank you," she said. "We will come again next Sunday." "I will make sure the lobby is ready," he said quickly. "If you need water, I will bring a cooler. If you need chairs, I will find more." Nyasha smiled that small, honest smile. "We will need people who are not afraid to know their numbers," she said. "Can you bring that?" He laughed, polishing the laugh on the way out. "People love me," he said. "They follow me." She closed the door gently. "Then lead them somewhere good," she said. The van engine started. He stepped back and watched, as if the van were a bird leaving the hand. She lifted her hand in a small wave. He lifted his with a bigger one. The van turned the corner and was gone. Purple petals lay at his feet. He stepped on one by mistake, and it became a dark stain on the concrete. He stared at it, a little annoyed, for no reason, really. Then he smiled again at himself in the glass of the building door. In his head, a picture began to paint itself. Nyasha laughing, Nyasha listening to him, Nyasha seeing him the way he liked to be seen. The picture hung itself in the gallery of his imagination, right between "Business Deal I Won" and "Shirt That Makes Women Stare." He told himself the familiar story. I will behave. I will be sweet. She will melt. I will be the sun. She will be the flower. He went upstairs, whistling a tune that had not yet learned its own caution. The apartment greeted him with shine and silence. He placed his keys on the table, aligned them so perfectly that even the ants could salute, then stood before his mirror and fixed his collar. "Next Sunday," he said to the man in the glass, "you will impress her." The man in the glass smiled. Pride danced. The stone in his pocket grew warm. Out in the town of Makanda, The wind that knows stories moved through jacaranda branches and market stalls and small rooms, where women kept their tears in quiet bowls. It found Gogo Malanga at her tomato pyramid and pressed her wrapper against her knees. She looked up into the bright sky and spoke to no one, or maybe to everyone. "May the mountain meet the wind," she whispered. "May the wind learn it cannot move the mountain." In the quiet apartment on the hill, Kundai turned the music up and cut tomatoes as if they had disrespected him. He did not know it yet, but his story had already set its feet on a new road. On that road, his perfume would not hide his teeth. On that road, kindness would not be a soft fruit he only held for show. On that road, the woman whose name meant grace would teach him the lesson all mirrors refuse to teach: that a man who loves his power more than his people is a man already small. And small things, when they try to roar, only call lions closer. Thaiti, woman with quiet fire. The next Sunday came dressed in purple blossoms. The jacarandas along Makanda Avenue had released their flowers like a careless bride throwing confetti. Children ran barefoot under the falling petals, shouting and laughing, while women carrying baskets balanced the purple rain on their heads as if it were light as air. In the lobby of Kundai's building, the clinic team returned. Plastic chairs squeaked against the floor. A tablecloth spread like a flag of health. Bottles of hand sanitizer stood like little guards. And again, at the center of the busy rhythm, was Nyasha Dube. Kundai was waiting, shirt pressed, shoes sharp, cologne drifting before him like a scout announcing a king. He told himself he was simply being polite, but his chest carried the restless beat of a drum that had not yet found its song. Nyasha wore no jewels, only a navy blue dress with sleeves rolled to her elbows. Her hair was tied back in a bun that did not ask for attention. Yet, attention followed her. She carried herself like water in a clay pot, steady, precious, and unshaken even if the road was rough. When she spoke to patients, her voice was calm, the kind of calm that made even old men stop fidgeting on the chairs. She laughed with children as if she had carried their laughter from the villages. When she wrote numbers, her handwriting was neat, as though she believed each person's blood pressure was a story that deserved dignity. Kundai watched, leaning against the wall. For a man used to being the brightest thing in the room, this was strange. Here, his white shirt and polished shoes seemed loud, while Nyasha's quiet strength drew more eyes than his careful grooming ever could. Nyasha's roots, Nyasha's story had started far from Makanda, in a village called Chivu Hills. She was the youngest of 5 children, and the only girl. Her brothers were tall, loud, and quick with fists, but they loved her with a protective fire. Their father, a farmer with hands rough as bark, taught them that life respected only those who respected the soil. Their mother, a schoolteacher, whispered softer lessons. Strength is not in shouting, strength is in standing. While other girls played with dolls, Nyasha's childhood was filled with goats to herd, fields to weed, and brothers who insisted. She learned how to wrestle so no boy could ever push her around. She remembered the evenings best. Fires glowing red, drums beating from distant homesteads, her mother's voice weaving proverbs into the smoke. A tree that bends too much breaks. The river that stays calm carries the heaviest secrets. These sayings became roots in Nyasha's heart. They made her quiet, but unshakable. By the time she finished her nursing training, people in her village said she had hands that healed not only bodies, but also pride. "She does not cure you," one old woman said. "She reminds you that you are still alive." So when she came to Makanda City, she brought that same spirit, steady, humble, unbending. Kundai makes his move. Kundai cleared his throat and walked closer, carrying 2 bottles of cold Mazo orange crush he had bought for the volunteers. He handed one to Nyasha with a smile that had melted many hearts before. "For your energy," he said. You work harder than all of them." Nyasha accepted the bottle with polite thanks, but her eyes did not soften the way he expected. She smiled, yes, but it was the smile one gives to a stranger who offered directions on the road, not a smile of surrender. "Energy comes from purpose," she said, opening the drink. "Not just sugar," Kundai chuckled. "You speak like an old woman with proverbs." Nyasha shrugged. "Maybe wisdom doesn't wait for wrinkles." The sentence slipped into his ear and stayed there, irritating and fascinating him at once. No woman had ever spoken to him like that, gently, but with a firmness that refused to bend. The storm in his chest as the day went on, Kundai tried harder. He brought chairs for the elderly, offered to carry heavy bags, even stood outside, guiding people into the lobby like a host at a wedding. He expected Nyasha to notice, to reward him with longer glances, but Nyasha's focus never left the patients. She listened to an old grandmother's stories about arthritis as if it were breaking news. She crouched to tie a little boy's shoelace so he wouldn't trip. Every act was deliberate, soft, and full of respect. Kundai found himself strangely jealous, not of another man, but of the way she gave her attention freely to ordinary people instead of to him. His chest burned, the old storm scratching at its door. For a moment he wanted to snap, to demand her gaze, but he swallowed it. He remembered Tendai's words. "One day, you will meet a woman who will not bend." Looking at Nyasha, he wondered if the day had already arrived. A test of wills. When the clinic ended, the volunteers packed their supplies into the van again. Kundai offered to help, and Nyasha allowed him to carry a small box of files. He felt insulted. He had hoped for something heavier, something that would show off his strength. At the van, she thanked him simply. "We'll be back next week." Kundai smiled, flashing his teeth. "Then I'll see you again. Maybe after I can take you for tea? There is a cafe nearby. People say their cakes are almost as sweet as you." It was his usual line, polished, smooth from use, but Nyasha only tilted her head slightly. Her voice was kind but firm. "Thank you, Kundai, but I don't drink tea with men I don't know." He laughed, expecting her to soften after the joke. "Then let me change that. We'll know each other." Nyasha's eyes met his fully for the first time that day. They were not angry, not playful, just steady, like a lioness who had no need to roar. "Knowing someone is not about flowers or tea," she said. "It is about watching how they treat others when no one is watching." And with that, she closed the van door and joined the other volunteers. Kundai stood frozen, his smile stiff. For the first time in years, his charm had failed him. Women usually blushed, giggled, or quickly said yes. But Nyasha had given him back something heavier than refusal. She had given him a mirror. The whisper in the market that evening, Kundai walked through the market again, restless. He bought meat, he bought bread, he bought things he did not need. Everywhere, he heard the whispers. Mr. Marembo with his shiny shoes. He breaks hearts faster than he buys shirts. One day, a woman will teach him. He walked faster, pretending not to hear. But inside, something churned. He could not stop replaying Nyasha's words. Knowing someone is about how they treat others when no one is watching. His pride wanted to dismiss her as arrogant. His mind told him she was only a nurse, while he was a man of wealth and style. But somewhere deep, a quieter voice whispered, "This one is different. This one is not afraid." Foreshadow of fire. That night, alone. In his apartment, Kundai sat before his mirror again. He adjusted his collar, practiced his smile, told himself, "You are power." But the mirror seemed less convincing than before. His reflection looked sharp, but hollow. He poured himself a drink and paced the room, muttering plans of how he would win Nyasha. "She will bend," he said. "They all bend." But the words sounded weak, like a drum played with tired hands. And somewhere outside, under the jacarandas, Nyasha walked home quietly, her footsteps steady. She was not planning war. She was not planning victory. She was simply living by the lessons of her mother. Strength is in standing. She had no idea yet how much her standing would shake Kundai's world. The mask cracks. The days that followed painted a strange picture in Makanda. At the bar, men still called Kundai Marembo king. At the market, women still admired his clean suits and cologne. On the streets, children still stared at the shine of his shoes. Outwardly, he looked the same, handsome, wealthy, confident. But inside, something had shifted. Ever since he met Nyasha Dube, his thoughts had become restless guests in his mind. He could not dismiss her the way he had dismissed other women. She had not melted under his smile, had not giggled at his compliments, had not blushed when he leaned close. Instead, she had looked at him the way mountains look at storms, calm, unmoved, unafraid, and that calmness unsettled him. The performance. Of a gentleman, Kundai decided to change his approach. If charm did not impress Nyasha, then he would try patience. He called his sister Tendai one evening. "Cece," he said smoothly, "you always tell me I am a storm. But see, I have learned. I am changing." Tendai snorted through the phone. "Changing? Or acting?" "Both can look the same," he replied, half joking. "But you'll see. I have met someone different." Tendai's voice softened. "Different? Or dangerous for your pride?" Kundai only laughed and ended the call. The next few weeks, he forced himself into the role of a gentleman. When Nyasha came to the building with the clinic team, he offered water before she asked. He carried chairs, wiped tables, and even swept the lobby floor himself so the volunteers would find it clean. He smiled so often his jaw ached, and when small accidents happened, the kind that used to light his fuse, he swallowed his anger like a bitter pill. One afternoon, Nyasha accidentally spilled sanitizer on his shirt sleeve. The old Kundai would have barked, thrown the bottle, maybe even stormed off, but this time he forced a smile. "It is nothing," he said. "Only cloth. I can wash it." Nyasha thanked him with her calm eyes, and Kundai walked away quickly before the storm inside could burst through. He locked himself in his apartment bathroom, staring at the stain on his shirt like it was an insult carved in stone. He clenched, his fists so hard his knuckles turned white. He whispered to his reflection, "Control. You are power. Control." But the mirror looked back with doubt. The little cracks, the mask of patience could not hold forever. One Friday evening, Nyasha agreed to meet him for a walk through the market after her clinic shift. Kundai felt triumphant, chest swelling like a drum. He dressed carefully, navy trousers, cream shirt, gold watch. He rehearsed jokes in the mirror, even practiced his gentle laugh. At the market, the air smelled of roasted maize and fried kapenta. Vendors called out prices. Children ran between stalls with sticky mango hands. Nyasha walked beside him in a simple yellow dress, carrying a small bag of vegetables she had bought. Kundai tried to impress her. He bought her roasted ground nuts, carried her bag, though it was light, and told stories of his business deals. But Nyasha was not dazzled. She listened politely, sometimes nodding, but her attention drifted often. To a barefoot child chasing a ball, to a grandmother struggling with her basket. At one stall, a young boy selling oranges tripped and his fruit scattered into the dust. Nyasha immediately knelt, helping him pick them up. Kundai hesitated, then reluctantly joined her, though annoyance prickled his chest. "Why waste your hands on dust?" he muttered quietly. "The boy should be more careful." Nyasha glanced at him. Her voice was calm, but her words cut sharper than any shout. "Care makes us human, Kundai. Without it, what are we?" He forced a smile, but inside, anger scratched like claws against his ribs. The first slip later that evening, they sat under a jacaranda tree eating roasted maize. Purple petals fell between them like slow rain. Nyasha spoke of her village, her brothers teaching her to wrestle, her mother's wisdom, her dream of opening a rural clinic someday. Her words were simple, but they carried the strength of roots. Kundai listened, but his pride grew restless. He wanted the spotlight back. He wanted her to be impressed with his wealth, his status, his stories. So he interrupted, bragging about his new car, his imported suits, his expensive colognes. Nyasha looked at him quietly, then asked, "And do these things make you happy?" The question pierced him. Happiness? He had never measured his life in happiness, only in control. He laughed too loudly. Of course. What else is life for if not to enjoy? Nyasha smiled faintly, then looked away at a child playing in the dust. Sometimes joy is not in what we buy, it is in what we give. The storm inside Kundai shook hard. He felt mocked, even though her voice carried no mockery. Are you saying I am selfish? He snapped suddenly, louder than he intended. People nearby turned their heads. Nyasha blinked, surprised at the sharpness in his tone. Then, calmly, she answered, I did not say that. I only shared my thought, but if the shoe pinches, maybe it belongs to you. Silence stretched between them. Kundai's jaw tightened, his fingers twitching against the maize cob. For a dangerous second, he felt the old urge to throw something, to raise his voice until she bent. But Nyasha's steady gaze stopped him. She was not afraid, not flinching. She simply looked at him, calm as still water. The storm inside hissed but found no place to escape. He swallowed hard, forced a laugh, and changed the subject. But the crack had shown. 10 days warning. That night he visited Tenday's house for supper. His sister served sadza, beef stew, and spinach with peanut butter. The children played. Loudly in the corner, laughter filling the room. As they ate, Tendai studied him. You look tense, brother. What is happening? Nothing, he said quickly. I am fine. Fine? She repeated, raising an eyebrow. Or fighting yourself? He slammed his spoon down harder than he meant to. The children fell silent. Why do you always accuse me? He barked. Tendai did not flinch. She chewed slowly, swallowed, and then spoke. Because I know you, Kundai. You are acting soft, but your anger is pacing inside you like a lion in a cage. You think love is about control. But one day, you will meet someone who cannot be controlled. That day, your lion will find its master. Her words echoed long after he left her house. The pressure cooker over the next week. The cracks widened when Nyasha accidentally misplaced his phone charger. He clenched his fists until his nails dug into his palms. He smiled and said, It's okay, but later locked himself in his car and shouted at the steering wheel. When she teased him gently about his obsession with ironing, he forced laughter, but his jaw ached from the pressure. When she praised a street vendor's kindness, he felt irrational jealousy, as if kindness from a poor man somehow threatened his pride. Each small moment was steam trapped inside a pot, and every time he swallowed his rage, the pressure built higher. The mask was slipping, foreshadow of eruption. One Sunday afternoon, as Arsenal played Chelsea on the lobby television, Nyasha, without thinking, picked up the remote and changed the channel to a cooking show. For 3 long seconds, silence swallowed the room. Kundai stared at the remote in her hand. His veins danced, his jaw tightened, his breath came heavy. Inside, the storm screamed, Snatch it! Smash it! Show her who you are! But then he remembered Tendai's warning. He forced a shaky laugh, his voice trembling. My love, he said, almost choking on the words. Maybe after this we can return to the match? Nyasha smiled softly, unaware of the war inside him. Of course. She turned back to the show. Calm, Kundai excused himself, walked to the bathroom, locked the door, turned on the tap, and punched the air wildly, his chest heaving, veins bulging. He screamed into the towel until his throat burned. Then he washed his face, fixed his collar, and returned with a smile. But in his heart, he knew. The mask was cracking. That night, as he lay in bed staring at the ceiling, Kundai whispered to himself, "She thinks I have changed. They all think I have changed, but I am only hiding. One day the storm will come out, and when it does, may God help the one standing before me." What he did not know was that the one standing before him was not afraid of storms. Nyasha was the mountain, and mountains do not move for thunder. The night of reckoning. The sun had not yet gone down when Kundai Marembo returned home that Wednesday. He looked like every other hard-working man trudging back from the city. Tie loosened, shirt creased, shoes dusty from the stubborn red soil of Makanda. But inside his chest, a war drum was beating. That day, his boss had humiliated him in front of his colleagues. A project report had errors, and instead of correcting quietly, the boss barked across the boardroom, "Kundai, do you even read before you speak? Next time bring sense, not excuses." The other men laughed, even the junior clerks. For someone who fed on respect, the insult stung like fire. Kundai left the office with rage already boiling. Then came traffic, 45 minutes trapped. Behind a noisy combi whose conductor shouted, "Kawazana, Kawazana, last seat," until the words drilled into his skull. The heat was merciless. Sweat soaked his shirt. Horns blared like angry trumpets. By the time he reached his building, his patience was shredded like old cloth. He climbed the stairs 2 steps at a time, shoulders stiff, eyes sharp. The storm inside him was ready to burst. The empty stove. He pushed his apartment door open and dropped his bag with a thud. The room smelled faintly of vanilla lotion and soap, Nyasha's scent. He expected the comforting aroma of sadza steaming on the stove, beef stew simmering, vegetables frying. That would cool his temper. That would make him feel like the king of his house again. But the kitchen was cold. The pots were empty. Nyasha was in the sitting room, legs curled on the sofa, watching her favorite telenovela. A tub of ice cream rested in her lap. She was laughing at something the character said, spoon poised mid-air. Kundai froze. His jaw locked. "Ru—" His voice came out low, dangerous. "Where is dinner?" Nyasha looked at him without flinching. She scooped another spoonful of ice cream and answered calmly, "I thought we could order pizza tonight." Her voice was casual, but those words cracked something inside him. Pizza? After a day like this? He heard not just the suggestion, but disrespect. He heard his colleagues' laughter again, his boss's insult echoing. The storm finally broke free. The first blow of words. "Order pizza?" His voice exploded across the room. "Do you know how much I have suffered today? Do you know what I endure to keep this roof over our heads? And you," he jabbed a finger at her like a spear, "you sit there watching strangers cry on TV while I starve?" Nyasha set the ice cream tub down on the table, her movements slow, deliberate. She did not raise her voice. She did not apologize. She simply looked at him with steady eyes and said, "Breathe, Kundai." That was the wrong word. His pride heard mockery. His rage heard challenge. His hand trembled. He stepped forward, voice rising. "Don't you dare tell me to breathe. I am the man of this house. When I say I want sadza, I expect sadza. Not this disrespect." The grip he lunged, grabbing her wrist roughly, tightening his hold enough to prove his strength. It was not yet a strike, but the threat hung heavy in the air. For 2 seconds, the whole world went silent. Even the actors on the TV seemed to pause mid-scene, frozen in anticipation. Nyasha's face did not twist in fear like others before her. Instead, she placed her spoon gently aside, stood up slowly, and lifted her chin until her eyes met his. Her voice came out low, calm, but sharp as a spear. Kundai Marembo, remove your hand before you see your ancestors tonight. But Kundai, blinded by fury and pride, did not release her. His veins bulged on his forehead. "Or what?" he spat. "You think because you are beautiful, you can challenge me? You think you can disrespect me in my own house?" The fall. Before he could tighten his grip further, Nyasha moved, and she did not move like the women he had bullied before. She moved like the girl who had grown up wrestling her brothers in the dusty courtyards of Chivu Hills. She twisted her, wrist free with lightning speed, hooked her leg behind his, and swept him clean off his feet. Kundai landed flat on his back with a thud that knocked the air out of him. "Aye!" he cried, clutching his waist. His pride screamed louder than his body, but Nyasha was not finished. In one fluid motion, she pinned him to the ground, her knee pressing firmly against his chest. He gasped for breath, eyes wide, arms flailing. She leaned over him, her face calm, but her gaze burning with unshakable fire. "This is the first and last time you will ever raise your hand in this house," she said, voice steady as a judge. "The next time I will send you back to your mother in an ambulance. Do you understand?" Kundai's mouth opened, but only a weak croak came out. His chest heaved beneath her knee. His arrogance collapsed like a wall of mud under rain. He nodded frantically. Yes, Rue, my angel, I understand. Please, let me breathe." Nyasha rose smoothly, adjusted her blouse, and picked up her ice cream again. She sat back down on the sofa, resumed her spoonful, and continued watching her telenovela as if nothing had happened. Kundai remained on the floor, blinking at the ceiling, ribs aching, pride bleeding. The longest night, that night, the apartment was silent. Nyasha slept peacefully, her breathing soft and steady. Kundai lay on the edge of the bed like a polite visitor, his body aching. Every time Nyasha shifted in her sleep, his muscles tensed like a frightened rabbit. He stared at the ceiling fan, turning slowly, his mind spinning faster. For the first time, he realized his fists were useless. His rage had met a wall it could not break, and the wall had a name: Nyasha. The aftermath for days, Kundai walked like a man carrying a secret wound. At the bar, when his friends joked about wives being troublesome, he only forced a smile. He dared not mention how he had been flipped onto his back like a sack of maize. At home, he tiptoed around the house. He spoke politely, moved gently, even breathed quietly. The storm inside him was still alive, but it had learned something frightening. Storms could be silenced. One evening, as he brushed his teeth, he caught his reflection in the mirror. The man staring back did not look like King. He looked small, uncertain, almost afraid. He spat into the sink, shook his head, and muttered, "So this is what Tendai meant. A woman who will not bend." But even then, pride whispered in his ear, "You cannot live like this. You are the man. Take back control." Kundai clenched his fists, determination hardening in his chest. "This is not over," he told his reflection. What he did not know was that Nyasha had not even begun to show the full weight of her quiet fire. The fall of a tyrant. For a few days after the great flipping, Kundai Marembo walked carefully in his own house. He moved, like a man afraid of his own furniture, opening drawers softly, lowering spoons gently, shutting doors as if they were sleeping babies. To anyone who knew him before, it was unbelievable. This was the man once called Makanda's king, the man who prided himself on control and temper. Now he walked on eggshells in his own kingdom, but pride does not die quietly. It licks its wounds. In the dark, waits for the right moment, and then whispers, "Take back what was stolen." Kundai's pride whispered day and night. Operation Silent Lion. After Nyasha threw him to the floor like a sack of mealy meal, Kundai's body hurt for 3 days. His back stiffened when he bent. His ribs complained when he coughed. Even laughter felt expensive. But worse than the pain in his body was the wound in his pride. How could a man feared by women, admired by men, and praised by markets lie flat on his back under his wife's knee? The memory replayed in his mind like a bad song. He would wake at night sweating, imagining her calm eyes looking down at him while he gasped for air. He decided he needed a plan. If fists could not win, then cunning would. He called it Operation Silent Lion. He began acting sweeter than honey. He washed dishes without being asked. He folded laundry. He ironed not just his shirts, but hers too. He even started sweeping the floor, something he had never done before. When Nyasha looked at him suspiciously, he smiled wide. "My queen, I am born again. I want to love you better." Nyasha only raised one eyebrow. She had grown up with 4 brothers. She knew when someone was playing games. Still, she said nothing. She just watched. The family dinner. To reclaim his image, Kundai organized a family dinner. He invited his sister Tendai, Nyasha's brothers, and a few cousins. He prepared a feast, grilled, chicken, rice with raisins, coleslaw, and plenty of Mazo orange crush. He sat at the head of the table like a king returning to his throne. As everyone ate, he raised his glass. His smile was wide, his voice confident. "Family," he announced. "In this house we are happy. We are peaceful. No drama. I am the happiest husband in Zimbabwe." People clapped politely. Nyasha smiled faintly, sipping her drink. But then Tendai, who had been watching closely, leaned forward with a sly grin. "Peaceful, you say?" she asked. "Brother, tell us how peaceful you were when Nyasha baptized you on the floor the other night." The room went silent. Nyasha's brothers turned to stare at him, eyes wide. One of them, Big Sam, a mechanic with hands like spanners, raised his eyebrows. "Hey, brother-in-law, is that true?" Kundai laughed nervously, waving a hand. "Ah, Tendai exaggerates. She likes jokes. You know my sister." But Nyasha, still calm, leaned forward and placed her chin on her palm. Her voice was soft but carried like a drum. "It's not a joke, Big Sam. He tried me and I finished him. If he tries again, I will finish him again." The table erupted. People burst into. Laughter so loud that even the neighbors' dogs barked. Some slapped their thighs. Others wiped tears from their eyes. Kundai sat frozen, holding his glass like it was the last piece of his dignity. His pride shattered in front of everyone. The whispering streets by the next morning, the story had spread across Makanda. At the market, women selling tomatoes chuckled, whispering, "Did you hear? Mr. Marembo, Mr. Big King, his wife folded him like laundry." At the bar, men teased him. "Careful, Kundai. Don't breathe too loud near your wife. She might body slam you again." Children even made a game of it, pretending to wrestle and shouting, "I am Nyasha! You are Kundai! Down you go!" Everywhere he went, eyes followed him with hidden smiles. Respect had turned into ridicule. Kundai could not bear it. Pride's last stand one evening as Nyasha returned from the clinic, cheerful and carrying groceries, Kundai decided enough was enough. He stood in the sitting room, chest puffed, legs spread wide, face set like a warrior preparing for battle. "Nyasha," he declared, "we need to talk." She set the groceries down calmly. "Yes, husband?" "You embarrassed me," he said, pointing a finger like a preacher. "You threw me on the floor like a child. You mocked me in front of family. I am the man of this house. You must respect me." Nyasha folded her arms, tilting her head slightly. "Respect is not demanded, Kundai. It is earned." Her calmness only fueled his anger. His voice rose. "No! From today, I set the rules. You cook on time. You listen when I speak. You will not challenge me again." The room held its breath. The second baptism, Nyasha stepped closer, her movements slow and deliberate. Her voice dropped lower. "Are you sure, Kundai Marembo, that you want to start this fight tonight?" Her question sent a bead of sweat crawling down his neck. But his pride shouted louder than his survival. "Yes," he barked. "I am the man here. If you want to challenge me, try me." He raised his fist slightly, not yet striking, but the gesture was enough. Nyasha moved like lightning. Before he knew what had happened, she ducked low, hooked her arm behind his knee, and flipped him backward onto the couch. His back hit the cushions with a painful thud. He gasped. "Ah! My back!" Nyasha towered over him, finger pointing in his face. Her voice was calm, firm, and terrifying. "I warned you once. I will not warn you again. If you ever raise your hand or your voice at me, Kundai, I will send you to Central Hospital. Do you understand?" His chest heaved. His voice cracked. "Yes, Rue, my queen, I understand." Good. She picked up her groceries, walked into the kitchen, and resumed cooking as if nothing had happened. Kundai remained on the couch, holding, his ribs blinking up at the ceiling. His pride lay in pieces around him. The tyrant falls. That night, he brushed his teeth quietly, opened the fridge gently, and even tiptoed to bed. Every sound felt like a threat. Lying in the dark, he stared at the ceiling and whispered to himself, "See your life, Kundai. You wanted to be the lion, but you married the whole safari." And somewhere in the quiet streets of Makanda, people whispered a new proverb. "A cruel man may break many hearts, but one day he will meet a woman who bends for no one. And that day, his tyranny will end." Kundai had ruled through fear, but fear had left him. His fall was complete. The woman who refused to break Makanda town had always known Kundai Marembo as the man with sharp shoes and a sharper tongue. He was feared, admired, sometimes envied. But after 2 humiliations, one in the privacy of his own home, and another in front of family, something had changed. The whispers in the streets were no longer about his cologne or his expensive watch. They were about his defeat. At the market, women selling vegetables chuckled, "Ah, the lion has become a kitten." At the bar, men joked, "Careful, if you drink too much mazo, your wife might suplex you like Nyasha did Kundai." Even children playing in the dust shouted, "I am Nyasha, you are Kundai, boom, down you go," before collapsing in laughter. Kundai's pride, once fat and loud, had grown thin and wounded. But it still lived inside him, whispering bitterly, "You are the man. You cannot live like this." Yet every time he looked at Nyasha, calm and steady, something stronger than pride spoke back. "This woman cannot be broken. If you fight her, you will only break yourself." The mirror talks. Back one evening, Kundai stood in front of his beloved mirror. It had always been his closest ally, the one that reflected his handsomeness, his charm, his carefully pressed shirts. But now, when he looked, he did not see King. He saw a tired man with restless eyes. "You," he whispered as he always did, "are power." But this time the words felt weak. The mirror seemed to shake its head silently as if saying, "No, Kundai, power is not what you think." For the first time, he did not admire his reflection. He questioned it. The new routine slowly, without announcing it, Kundai began to change. He no longer slammed doors or barked orders. He started cooking sometimes, fumbling with pots, yes, but trying. When Nyasha laughed at his salty rice, he did not flare up. He laughed too. He carried groceries without complaint, washed dishes without grumbling. He even began greeting neighbors kindly, something he never cared to do before. At first, people thought it was an act. "He is pretending," they whispered. But weeks passed, and the act did not fade. The storm that had once lived on his lips and in his fists was quiet, not dead, but quiet. Nyasha's calm. Fire Nyasha did not gloat. She did not remind him of his humiliation or boast about her strength. She simply carried on, steady as always, her presence a constant reminder that cruelty had no place here. Sometimes she would speak softly, and her words sank deeper than any lecture. Respect is not begged, Kundai. It is lived. A man who fears losing power has already lost it. Love is not control. Love is partnership. She never raised her voice, but her firmness was unshakable. And strangely, Kundai began to listen. Not because he feared another flip to the floor, but because her calmness made his rage look childish. The test of football won Saturday, Arsenal lost badly. In the past, this was Kundai's most dangerous moment. Remote controls had died under his wrath. Plates had flown like birds. That night, the score was shameful. His blood boiled. His hand reached for the remote. But then he saw Nyasha in the kitchen, humming softly as she washed dishes, completely unbothered. Her calmness poured over his fire like water on coals. He set the remote down. He switched off the TV quietly and whispered to himself, "It is well." For the first time, he felt stronger choosing peace than choosing rage. The wedding bouquet. Few months later, they attended a cousin's wedding. The garden was full of music, laughter, and white tents. Nyasha wore a green dress that made heads turn. Kundai walked beside her, more subdued than usual. When the bouquet was tossed, Nyasha joined the other women for fun. Miraculously, she caught it with one hand. The crowd cheered. But then a nosy auntie shouted, "Nyasha, you already have a husband, or are you preparing for husband number 2? The crowd erupted in laughter. Kundai's old pride stirred. He felt insulted, his jaw clenched. He wanted to drag Nyasha aside and scold her for embarrassing him. The storm rose, hot, sharp, ready. But then he remembered the night she pinned him to the floor. He remembered the steady fire in her eyes, and he remembered Tendai's warning. One day, you will meet a woman who will not bend. He took a deep breath, forced a smile, and joined the laughter. If husband number 2 is stronger than me, then she deserves him. He joked. The crowd roared with laughter, this time with him, not at him, and for the first time, Nyasha turned to him with genuine warmth, her eyes soft. That night, as they walked home, she said simply, "You are learning." Those 3 words meant more to him than any applause he had ever received in his life. The lesson spreads news of his change spread through Makanda. The market women noticed. "Ah, Kundai now carries his own bags." At the bar, men teased him, but with new respect. "Teach us, King, how do you stay so calm these days?" Even children stopped mocking him and instead greeted him politely. It was as if the whole town had been waiting to see if the storm could truly become a river, and now they were beginning to believe. The moral of the mountain one evening, sitting on their balcony under the purple jacaranda blossoms, Nyasha told him a proverb her mother used to say, "A mountain does not fight the wind, it simply stands." And in the end, the wind learns respect. Kundai looked at her, and for once, he did not feel smaller. He felt grateful. The cruel man who once broke plates and hearts had been broken himself. Not by fists, not by shouts, but by a woman who refused to bend, a woman whose quiet fire had taught him that true strength was not in control, but in humility. Epilogue. The new Kundai months. Later, when the clinic held another community drive in his building, people noticed the difference. Kundai did not just carry chairs, he welcomed patients, fetched water, and even sat with old men to keep them company while they waited. He did not boast, did not demand attention. He simply served. And Nyasha, calm as always, watched quietly. She had not changed him with threats, but with firmness. She had not broken. and in refusing to break, she had reshaped him. Makanda carried a new proverb in its whispers. A cruel man may believe he is iron, but one day he will meet a woman who is stone. Iron bends, stone does not. And so ended the reign of fear in the house of Kundai Marembo. The storm had met the mountain, and the mountain had not moved.